Baldwin County Public School System is one of the finest educational environments in the state of Alabama. This documentary is commissioned by the Baldwin County Commission. We especially appreciate the many contributions of our retired educators. It is our goal to illuminate the few remaining and historic public schoolhouses in an effort to pay tribute to one of the finest public school systems in the state of Alabama.
I went to Perdido in first and second grade. We lived in the south end of Lottie, and the bus didn't come by there, so we had one bus running from Lottie. Mr. Fletcher Littles owned it. And I went, Miss Ralph, Florence Ralph was my first grade teacher, and Miss Lewis was my second grade teacher. We moved to what we call the old place in Lottie, up north end of the community. And third through the sixth grade, I went to Lottie. And Cousin Mary, Cousin Tilly Hales, and Miss Lily Presley were the teachers there. Mr. Raspberry came in at a later date. I think he taught me, and if no the sixth grade, maybe the fifth and sixth. Mr. Raspberry and a bunch of us boys put in the sewage out of the kitchen. We dug the ditches and did all of that work. I don't know whether it was in the afternoons or during school time. But it wasn't a whole lot of work. But Miss Levins, in the earlier years, was the cook there. We walked home from school with her every day. She was about as big around as my leg, and we'd all get behind her on a cold day, and she'd knock the wind off of us. It's about 3 miles from our house to the school. Time we'd catch a bus at my grandmother's house, and about a quarter of a mile from home, and ride to Lottie school. But we'd walk home in the afternoon because Lottie turned out the same time Baymonette did, and the bus was in Baymonette, so we'd have to ride the bus, we'd have a long wait. All the people over where the Baptist church is now and on that road where John M. Jones lived, they had to walk across the woods every morning to catch a bus at the Lottie school. And we'd all gather up on the front porch and fight and fuss and do whatever, you know, to pass the time off. Then Mr. Littles would pick them up. And later on, we got a second bus.
We moved to Lottie when I was in the 4th grade. At that time, they had 2 grades to each room at the Lottie school. 1st and 2nd, 3rd and 4th, no, 5th and 6th, or else the 5th and 6th were separate. Anyway, they had. But I moved there from McCullough, where they had, I had been in a single classroom. I wasn't in with other grades. And so I was about 9 years old when we moved there. And so we went in, I was in the 4th grade. Some of the things they played in the auditorium. And I can just remember those boys racing up in that auditorium, and I couldn't get over that because we had come there from McCullough, where each grade had its own. You had, 1st grade was all of that, and I went into the class, and it was 3rd and 4th grade. And it was really a different situation.
I have some very fond memories of Langham Lottie School. I had some very special teachers which made me feel special, and one of them being Miss Mary Biggs. She always made me feel special. I was not excited about going and starting to school that first day. My mother had to go with me, or she did go with me to console me, but I had Miss Mary Biggs, my cousin, and also my cousin Miss Tilly Hales. They consoled me and held me until I knew that I was safe. I was fine there. But I also had a special teacher from that lived in Montgomery, or at Fitzpatrick outside of Montgomery. And she invited me and my cousin, Patricia Presley, to go home on the weekends with her. So we got to go through the Capitol building, Archives of History, and just a nice trip. We felt very special that way also. And another thing about going to Lottie, Langham Lottie School, Ms. Little was our cook there, and she made me feel special. She would let me know the days that they had dried lima beans, because that was my favorite. And another thing was, this is a little bit silly, but the way that I remembered spelling mathematics was Mr. Akridge told her every morning at the ice cream stand. And arithmetic, a rat in Tom's house may eat Tom's ice cream. I don't know if anybody else knew that, or if that was just something that came to us.
I really enjoyed my days at Langham Lottie School. I started when I was 5 years old because my birthday felt wrong. And the first grade was a little bit intimidating. I cried a lot. I've always been tenderhearted. And the teacher was Mrs. Angeline Stewart from Stockton. And I didn't know her, but she was a pretty young lady and had a lot of fun with her. The memories was like if I didn't know how to do something, I would just cry. So she would comfort me. Anyway, after the first grade, I was less intimidated and knew that school was to be enjoyed. And second grade was my very favorite teacher, Miss Lily Presley, because she was the mother of my best friend, Maxine Presley. And I really did enjoy that year. We had lots of fun things we done. We'd go on field trips. One of the field trips that we'd take would be over to the sand gullies there in Lottie. And can you imagine a school teacher taking off a bunch of little children? But we would slide down the little slopes there to the sand gully on boards and things, on the straw and all. Had a real fun day, have a picnic there. Then whenever we come back, we just have to walk home. The distance from the school to my house was probably around 2 miles. But it never seemed to bother me. Sometimes in real cold weather, I'd get home and my hands would be so cold until I didn't even have to have warm water. I could just take a pan of cold water and stick my hands down in it, and it would warm up my hands.
Okay, I started school at Langham Lottie School in 1948, I think. I was 5 years old, and at first they were not going to let me go to school at that age, but Mother insisted that I was ready. So then I had a birthday in November, and I was 6. We had to walk home from school, and sometimes we had to walk to school. But we had 2 teachers that traveled from Uriah, and they would stop by and pick us up. Nelda had some problems with her legs aching, so her sweet, sweet teacher decided the thing to do was for her to ride with her to school. And Miss Simmons and Miss Davis were the 2 teachers. Miss Davis lived in Uriah, and Miss Simmons lived near Montgomery, and they were sisters. They were very, very sweet, and one of the things that I remember is Miss Davis would put me on her lap and put lotion on me. So I decided that I must have had dry skin even then. But I do remember the school building, and I remember Mother bringing cupcakes on my birthday to celebrate, and it was right outside the doors on the right-hand side, a little foyer, where she set up the table and we had the cake and everybody had a good time. I can recall 8 students that were in first, second, and third grade combination at that time. Our classroom was on the right-hand side, and it had a big furnace, a big pot-bellied coal furnace. and we did have a coal pail there, and also I just remember us having to feed the coal into the furnace and how hot it was, and how it just warmed part of the room. In our classroom, we had a little rug that had ABCs and 1, 2, 3s on it, and the little cane bottom straight chairs that we sat in. And I also remember that there were only 2 girls in 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade, and Diane Jones was the other girl. Wendell Dean, Jerry Langham, Ray and Ralph Presley, the Jones, Stanley and Robert Carl, and Kenneth Wilson. And those are the only ones that I can recall. But I was thinking that it was 13, but I think that's only 8 or 9. So some of them are missing from my memory. But it has been a few years.
We had a dynamo which Cousin Henry was in charge of. He kept the electricity going and fueled up and whatever it took to run it. We had a pretty modern bathrooms out back. It had cement floors and kind of a cement stew built up for the bathrooms. It had a boys and a girls, pretty good sized bathrooms. And I'm not sure where we got our water. I don't know where we had a pump before the electricity or not. It was, I was in the 5th or 6th grade when we got electricity in Lottie. So we had to make do with what we had and didn't know we didn't have it. My mother and father both went to the Langham school, which was about 3.5 miles north of where Langham Lottie was. And I'm not sure, my mother's younger sister is 94-year-old, and I talked with her yesterday, and she went to 1 or 2 years at Langham. Then she started at the Langham Lottie School. And Mr. Mosley, Steve Mosley, was a teacher, as she said, at Lottie. And Mr. McGowan was there at the Langham School, and I think he went to the Lottie School. He was a superintendent of education in Baldwin County at one time. In my 6th grade, Mr. Raspberry, first male teacher we had at Lottie in my time, he taught us in the 5th and 6th grade. He married a local girl, one of the Biggs girls. We had a slate roof on the building. We had big old, big belly stoves, you know, burnt coal. We bought coal. I don't know how it got there, but that was part of the job, getting coal in to get the burners going. And some of us, like Sambo Chinks and some of the other mean boys, if they found a piece of slate around the building, they'd hide it, and then when they brought the coal in, they'd slip it in the heater. And after it got hot, it would make a dynamite sound, you know. And we'd always blame it on somebody else for doing it. Of course, we never did admit getting into trouble. I know we did. I went to school with Libby's brother, my wife's brother, at Perdita in 1st or 2nd grade, and we got a ball field right by the school there in later years, and I remember the boys from Perdita coming, whipping us in softball. Max, Libby's brother, was one of them. And I don't think we had that field for many years, and I don't know how long it stayed there.
Let me tell you what I remember that we did in that community that was so nice. People would come from all over, and they'd have a big party. And one time, cousins of mine came from Walnut Hill, and they had a beauty contest. Well, the beauty contest was the one that made the most money, and my granddaddy from Walnut Hill put it on another cousin. He didn't put it on me. So, I mean, those are some things that I remember. But they had just beautiful lights in that building. they had singings on Sundays. They would have singings, and people would come from all over, and they would sing, and it was just really an interesting aspect of the life there. And I thought they were awfully good singing. Of course, I didn't know. But they would go out at night, and they would get that generator running, and all those lights would be on in that entire school. They had 4 big classrooms in the big auditorium.
I just remember the furnace there, and the big dynamo furnace in the auditorium. And the cold days, they had buckets of coal they would bring in. And you know the story in the Bible of Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. I always thought that in my mind that was a picture of that furnace, and of them throwing them in the furnace. That's where it happened, was at Langham Lottie School to me. But it was just good times there. I enjoyed going to school, and just went from the 1st grade to the 5th grade. It was a good experience at Langham Lottie School. The school was used for other things as well as teaching. I mean, we had like for socials, or I remember Wendell Dean and I forget who else, but impersonating Elvis Presley and Pat Boone, going to hear them, and just enjoyed that. And it was used also, I think, maybe for the women in the community. Other thing, but the Mennonites, they came, and we had Bible school at nighttime, and that was really special. Everyone enjoyed that. So it's just a very fond memories that I have of Langham Lottie. Okay, the ones in the picture of myself and Durwood Biggs, my cousin, and Alvin Scott, Sadie Ruth Stafford, and Miss Thelma Longnecker was the teacher. And it was just a special time. Brother Richard Kling came out and led the adults in the class, and Ms. Longnecker was our teacher. And we really, I thought, learned a good bit about the Bible and about the different stories in the Bible. It was a good time.
We had such loving classrooms. Whenever we were called to order, we had a devotion. And in that morning, you listened for the devotion, and then you would salute the flag. And whenever they called the roll, they would ask you to answer with a Bible verse. And Miss Presley was such a strong Christian lady. She expected us to learn a new one, but I can remember, maybe I'm picking on boys, but it seemed like most of the boys said Jesus wept, because it was the best for them. We just had lots of real wholesome time, that it was no ugly words. All of it was positive. I can't think of some of the chores we did. Probably was, you would have turns dusting the erasers, and you wanted to be outside and do something. You take those erasers and go around to the back. There's a cement foundation there for the pump, I believe, pump house, and you would bang those erasers on the cement and get the dust out of them. We were taught that, you know, we kept our room clean, you swept, you kept your paper up out of the floor. Just good, basic teaching. If you make a mess, clean it up.
Other things I remember are the auditorium, where we had fun playing in there. Also, we had programs, and I remember that those were interesting. The cafeteria was a main memory of mine, and Miss Pearlie Little was our lunchroom lady, and she did a great job with biscuits and tomatoes and lima beans and honey and the commodity butter and all kinds of good things. And whenever you wanted something else, all you had to do was just raise your hand and she brought it to you. We used the old schoolhouse as a community house too. It was a gathering place for everybody, and that was just a lot of fun, I thought. I recall at recess that we would sit out under the pine trees, and I would plait the pine needles and make little things out of that. Also, I remember getting the pine mash out, and we would put that between our teeth, you know, and get the taste of the pine mash.
After the school was closed, we fixed it up. I think he kind of let us cut some timber off the school property, and we painted and got the school building in pretty good shape. Repaired all the windows. Of course, the men in the community was responsible for that. And we voted there. We had Bible study in there, and we had all kind of community activities. Then kids from outside of the community, and probably some of the community kids, was playing basketball. We had a basketball court. But Mr. Oscar Day at Rayburn, he used to live at Lottie back in the older days. He didn't buy the building. The county gave him the building. He tore it down and built 2 houses on Maytower Road in Rayburn. And I visited with his son this past week, and he told me that was in late 60s, I believe it was, somewhere in the mid to late 60s. I forget what day that they built a house. And he's still living in one of the houses.
It was a nice school, very pretty school, and some of the things that were done, the Mennonites came in and they did Bible study. They did a good job. They would have in all the different classrooms, and it was just a good, they were not teaching their Mennonite religion, they were teaching the Bible. That's what I remember about it. It was the Bible. And we enjoyed that. I do remember them saying, the people of the community said, the Langham School was where Dorothy Drew lives now. That was the Langham School. And the Lottie School was where the Methodist Church is now. And that was the 2 schools that they had. And the people from had to walk to school. When they finally, Mr. Little drove the school bus, and he let his children ride to Perdido, and he picked up different ones on down the way.
I'm remembering 6th grade was Francis Raspberry, and I think that was the first man teacher that I had. But he was also had married into the family, was a relative, far removed, but anyway. He was very good, and I can remember him walking along with a ruler, just going down by the rows there, and he'd tap on your desk. Whatever, it just was a friendly little, like, you know, you're paying attention, that's good, all like that. I think he was probably disappointed that he didn't have any more boys. I think it was more girls back then. I'm not remembering a whole lot of discipline problems. I think having the man figure was good, but it wasn't that we needed the discipline. I have a tendency to remember the good things anyway. I'm sure there might have been some troubles, but I'm just remembering a fun time. And remember the PTA meetings, which my parents always attended. It was a family thing. Mother took part in presenting a little play. And I don't remember the name of that play, but her part was like she was a secretive person. She would pop in and out behind the curtains, and I was so proud of her that she would do that. Daddy was not ever that much in front of the people, and Mother either, but they were behind the scenes with us for sure. We always knew if a teacher told on us. I had 2 other siblings that went to school. If a teacher brought up something that wasn't going right at school, that they were going to be on the teacher's side. We needed to obey.
I guess the main thing that I remember about being in the auditorium was saluting the flag, and I think we even answered with Bible verses when they called the roll or something like that. But it was, to me, it was a huge building. It felt like it was huge, but first and second grade in one class on one end of the school. On the other end, I think, was maybe third, fourth, and fifth. And then behind that classroom was the cafeteria. And Ms. Little, Pearlie Little, was the cook, and she treated everyone special. Yeah, on the right-hand side, facing the schoolhouse, was I remembered being the first and second grade classes. And then we had the stage and the auditorium, and then on the other end was another room. And then from that room was the cafeteria, as best I can remember, where Ms. Little did the cooking. I do remember having a picture made on the front steps of the building, and somewhere I have that picture with the whole class. Daddy would take us on real cold mornings or bad weather, but yeah, we did walk a good bit. And that was probably 2 miles maybe from there up to our house. But we would go under a culvert on the way home, so we didn't always go right home. I know we did go to the school whenever we had stormy weather in the community. Felt like the schoolhouse was more safe, safer than our homes were. And we would go, but I just remember being scared because seeing the fear on Uncle Herbert Dean's face and my grandma, Barbara Hales. Just, they were really afraid of the stormy weather. And I could tell that they were, and that made me even more afraid. But the building was used for that as well.
A vivid memory that I have is of the outdoor toilets. And I was afraid of snakes and spiders, and I did not want to go into that outdoor toilet. That made for a little bit of a problem. But one memory that just popped into my mind was the gallberry patch in front of the school. And there was a fire there. And I remember standing on the front porch of the school and thinking, oh my goodness, that could cross over that dirt road and could come into this area. And that was a little frightening. I do remember walking home from school with friends and, well, actually family, because everybody was family. And I remember just playing along the way and having a good time. And those, Eloise and Wayne Hales were the 2 that we walked the same lane that we did.
We had a neighbor, we called him Six-Toed Sambo Jenks. Everybody loved Sambo, and he was just full of it. And he smoked. He had his own tobacco. And they were horse playing around there one day, and he had a box of matches in his back pocket. And Franklin Presley, I believe it was, or one of the other boys was wrestling with him. They got him by his feet, dragging him across the grass out there, and the matches got caught on fire. Of course, it didn't hurt Sambo, but it was a lot of fun anyway. Always, Cousin Tilly, I guess she was kind of the principal there, I'm not sure. But she'd ring the old bell when his class was ending or starting, we'd have to go in. The old school building was up off the ground, and we'd sit and watch her. Cousin Taylor was a big lady, and we could see her legs. She'd be going one way and we'd go the other, she was trying to head us off, and we always stayed one step ahead of her. But it was a lot of fun, and I remember one morning I was telling you that the people across the on the other highway over there by the Baptist church, they had to walk across the woods to catch a bus. And Maxine Jones, a cousin, distant cousin, we was all standing on the porch one day, and she had it was cold. She had on a bunch of clothes, and she got up next to me. I told her, I said, Maxine, you smell bad. You didn't take a bath this morning. That didn't go good with her, and she scratched me up. I mean, the whole side of my face was raw. Mr. Raspberry got to school. He wanted to know what was going on, so we went to see Mr. Steve Mosley down at Perdita.
The boys would get into trouble, and they'd send them out to get the switches, to switch them. Well, they notched the switches, and they didn't get a very good switching. But it had the boys' bathroom and the girls' bathroom, if I remember right, were separated at that time. It's a good community, and it was a wonderful community to raise a family in. We would have singings in the auditorium, and that was really something. You know, people would come from all over, and they would sing. And even when my children were small, they still would have the singings there. They would have the homemade ice cream, and they would have the beauty pageants that I never did get to be in.
One other thing, the county health nurse would come to give typhoid shots, and it was usually in the wintertime, and I remember wearing a heavy coat to school, and the nurse had those really long needles, and she had a little container with looked like rocks in it. I'm not real sure what it was, but I remember her giving the shots, and that we were so afraid, and some would not even have the shot. You know, they would scream and run and not do that. But when we got the shots, by the afternoon when the bell was, when school was out, when the bell rang, then we would walk home, and I'd have that heavy coat on, and I remember my arm being so sore that it was not fun. One other thing, the county health nurse would come to give typhoid shots, and it was usually in the wintertime, and I remember wearing a heavy coat to school, and the nurse had those really long needles, and she had a little container with looked like rocks in it. I'm not real sure what it was, but I remember her giving the shots, and that we were so afraid, and some would not even have the shot. You know, they would scream and run and not do that. But when we got the shots, by the afternoon when the bell was, when school was out, when the bell rang, then we would walk home, and I'd have that heavy coat on, and I remember my arm being so sore that it was not fun.
Lottie had, when we left school at Lottie, they was a road full of people going to the store. They was, all the Halls lived up above Dallas Taylor store, and I don't know how many people was in school then, but they was 40 or 50 students there, I'm pretty sure, when I was there, or more. I keep saying 13 of us from Lottie graduated together in 1955. But we all went to school together at Lottie. Maxine and Donald Whittington, Ray Langham, Charles Wilson, Mason Lee Johnson, Oprah Jones, still friends with a lot of them. Now, several of them stage, I went there one year, my brother was going to school there then. Or maybe that was in the summer months. They had a play going, and one was singing like Elvis Presley. And Mr. Bruce Wilson, he just got all excited about wasn't no being able to sing, and he didn't know it was a put on. Langham Lottie meant a lot to everybody that lived in Lottie at that time and went to school in Lottie. It was something we were proud of, and we'll remember all our lives, I guess. And I remember the PTAs, Cousin Henry Biggs going and getting the dynamo started and unlocking the building and make sure the lights was working and all that kind of stuff. I know that we voted there, I guess after the school closed when we started voting there, and the hunting club there in Lottie, they had a lot of fish fries there. My daddy was the chief cook on catfish, had an old wash pot, filled it up with grease, and he had pulled it all up at one time. He was kind of the chief cook there. And all kind of community activities. And hurricanes come through, that's where we all went, to Lottie School. And not all of us. My grandpa, he wouldn't go, made my daddy mad. But he went to bed. I lived in, like I say, in the south end of Lottie during the first to second grade. We had to walk 3/4 of a mile to a mile to catch the bus. The bus Mr. Fletcher Little's owned, it's not like the buses today. It had one long seat down each side of the bus and 2 seats back to back in the center of the bus. Everybody sat back to back in the center and on the side, everybody facing one another. And we were going to school one morning, and the hall boy was picking at me, and my aunt was sitting behind me, and he wouldn't leave me alone, and my aunt threw a book at him and hit Mr. Fletcher up behind the head with the book. But of course, Mr. Fletcher, he didn't care. He never did look back. Mr. Fletcher was a big man, a heavy-set man. And driving down the road, he'd be whistling or humming, and he'd be patting his feet. That bus would be doing this, you know, going back and forth. But later on, Mr. Ollie Presley got a bus, and well, it was a county bus then that he drove. But you did not talk to the fellow sitting next to you on the seat. If you did, you got put off in the middle of the woods. And it happened quite often. Mr. Ollie, he didn't put up with anything, or Cousin Ollie Presley. But we had 2 buses for the rest of the duration. It's still got 2 buses coming through Lottie.
Yes, we did use it for the home demonstration club there, and we really did use that. Even though even after they moved the children down to Perdita. But the reason that they moved the children, Mr. Little he was taking all of them, but in the lower part of the community. He'd pick them up and just take them on, and that's what eventually closed the school down. It was during the war, and that they didn't have a lot of men teachers. You know, they were all in service, and they were using the women, and they were on. They weren't really certified. That doesn't mean that they weren't teaching. They were very good people that were trying to do a good job of teaching. And sometimes these certifications are not as much as they're marked up for.